Cuba, it's me! Welcome to episode 180 of The Willow Show, which stands for Wrestling is Life. Life is Wrestling. Now, today I want to talk about silliness in wrestling. There's a lot of silliness in wrestling that's happened over the years, and being a wrestling fan, you kind of just gotta grin and bear it. Take the good with the bad, so to speak, and there's been a lot of misses, a lot of hits too, so you're not going to win them all, but there's been a lot of silliness, and I just want to know what kind of things that you thought were the silliest. I mean, you can go on and on. Some examples. I remember when I was a kid, the gobbledygooker thing. I just did not get it, and I guess Vince McMahon kind of has a weird sense of humor, and some of these things don't really catch on with the fans, and some of them do. There's been a lot of things like Mae Young giving birth to the hand. That was pretty ridiculous. What about like current stuff, like that Joey Ryan guy flips guys with his penis? That's pretty silly, but it catches on. I understand why he does it though. If he's getting booked and making money, he could do that and not hurt his body for years. There's been a lot of silly stuff. WCW had silly stuff, like the Shockmaster. Some of the gimmicks over the years have been really ridiculous, and some of them make you almost ashamed to say you're a wrestler or a wrestling fan. But there's been a lot of more cool stuff than there has been silly stuff. Like some of that stuff Vince Russo booked, that's pretty ridiculous. And some of the characters, even before Vince Russo, like in WCW, the old WCW, they had that one tag team that was just so out there. It's like, come on, guys, like really, like maybe they thought some of this stuff would catch on. Like maybe some of it was. Look at the Red Rooster. It's so ridiculous. So what do you think is silly? And is there anything that other people thought was so ridiculously silly, but you still liked it? I mean, look at like Santino's Cobra, or Mick Foley and his Socko, or like even Elian, like me, when I come out and acting like a fool, some people like it. Where some of the grown men just groan and they're like, oh man, please can we have a real wrestler out there? It's like, I am a real wrestler, I'm just trying to get liked. When I tried to be a real wrestler, it didn't work as good. But times are changing, and they always will, so things that might work today wouldn't have worked back in the day, and things back in the day may not work today. There's been quite a few ridiculous things, and it just makes me laugh. It's fun to be a wrestling fan and look back at all the nostalgia of all the just hocusy pocusy crap they did, like Ultimate Warrior and Papa Shango, where he's coughing up the stuff. Like, what can you say about that? How do you defend it? And that's a good question too. If you're even a wrestling fan or a wrestler, how do you defend it when someone that's not a wrestling fan is like, oh, wrestling sucks, and you're like, no, it's good, blah blah blah, and you're trying to make a case for yourself, and then they bring up some one of those things, or like oh hey, well, what about this? Remember this? And you're just like, well, give me an asterisk. Come on, give me a break. That's one thing. Like, how do you defend it? Because it can be hard sometimes. But wrestling, I mean, in general, especially nowadays, look at the athletes. I mean, some of the moves sometimes when they do the flippity floppity stuff and they look like they're just in sync doing a routine, but yet some of the moves they do, at least it's like, okay, because I remember back in the day when I was first a wrestling fan, and sometimes you would see the guys not even hit him, and then sell like a champ, and you're like, like how do you defend that? And then, but nowadays they're like doing this triple spinning thing, and they're not even touching them, but it's at least it's like impressive, right? Like there's a lot of stuff. So what is your favorite silly things? That's what I want to know. There's some things that are just so dumb that you can't help but like. And I'm trying to think of an example here. Because some of the times you're just like, it's so dumb, it is funny. You know, one of those things where you're just like, it's just over the top, and you're just like, but they still to this day do some pretty dumb things. But hey, you have to try and hit every different audience. Like everybody likes a little bit of something. So you gotta throw a little bit of silliness in there, but I don't like when they try too hard and they make it obvious that they're trying to be funny and everyone knows it's not funny. I think more of the times, if they were gonna do something really silly, but play it off like they didn't think it was silly, like they were really into it and they believed it, that might be funnier. But when they're like trying to be like, hey, look at me, I'm trying to be funny, and they're not being funny, that's horrible. But I want to know, what are some of your silliest things in wrestling, or dumbest, or stupidest things in wrestling that makes it tough and you just cringe and you're like, oh, one of these things? Let me know, because on the W.I.L.L.I.W show, like, or you get a leg drop, comment, or you get a clothesline, subscribe, or you get a suplex. I'm your host, Elian Habanero. I love wrestling. Cuba!